What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. Monday, June 3rd. Early on a Monday morning, Anthony Sanfilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. Phillies coming off of a weekend in which they won 2 out of 3 games over the St. Louis Cardinals. And if you zoom out, you'd say, hey, pretty good weekend. I don't know, though, as you zoom in, if it was a great weekend. Phillies obviously had an opportunity to win a game last night. 3 for 17 with runners in scoring position. Gregory Soto gets 2 outs and extras. Runner on third, gives up a line drive to right field. Phillies again can't score a ghost runner in extra innings, third straight game, which that has happened now. 3 straight extra inning losses, 4 out of their last 5, and that's all fine and well. But the bigger issue is now you take a light-hitting group of outfielders and you subtract Brandon Marsh from it for what seems like will be the foreseeable future. Don't want to jump the gun here too much, Anthony, but that didn't look good last night.
No, it didn't look good, Bob. And I pointed out on Twitter the difference between this and the Turner one, right? So when Trey Turner gets hurt, he pops up, and the first report is he's having hamstring soreness, which I didn't buy at the time because soreness is something that develops. Right? This is it's not an instantaneous thing. Like, he came right out of the game when that happened. And so my antenna went up on that. This one, I feel like they're being more honest, and they called it a hamstring strain. Well, a strain, for those that don't know, I know a lot of people do know, but for those that don't, is a tear, and it's a partial tear. And the fact that he was not available to come talk to us after the game last night and that they would provide an update today tells me that injury is one that's going to keep him out at least as long as Trey Turner has been out, if not even a little bit longer. I know that there are players who come back from strains quicker. Someone pointed out on Twitter last night that, hey, Rhys Hoskins, who's coming in with the Brewers tonight, he just came back and he was only out for 15 days with a strain. But there's a lot different if you're a DH or if you're playing first base than if you are an outfielder who has to run around constantly, right? So I have a feeling that this is not going to be a 2-week injury. This is going to be a much longer injury. I don't want to say more than 4 to 6, I think, is your.
Yeah, we'd love to have egg on our face after this, but my impression was similar to yours. He was unavailable last night. I would be surprised if you saw him before the All-Star break. I don't want to be the Grim Reaper about this thing, but I mean, that's 5 weeks. That's probably what you're looking at if this is what we think it is. So that's going to create some issues for this team because, look, coming into this series against the Brewers, Phillies outfielders, we touched on this last week a little bit, Phillies outfielders have the 25th OPS right now, 625 OPS collectively, 25th best. I mean, it's terrible. You saw last night Christian Pache in a key spot. I mean, look, that's a tough matchup, but like, what does that look like over a month of consistent play? Whit Merrifield, who, get ready for some Whit Merrifield, because what did Rob say after the game last night? Oh, we think that part of unlocking Whit Merrifield is getting him more consistent at bats. Well, now there's a gaping hole out in left field, so maybe Whit Merrifield gets some more at bats. I know that probably excites a lot of people listening to this right now. They have a problem out there, and they don't have the natural depth piece to come in and fill it. They thought when Trey Turner went down that they had 2 really good options. One being, hey, Whit Merrifield can play second. We'll play Bryson Stott at shortstop. That'll be fine. And then certainly the Edmundo Sosa run happened. And so they had the depth pieces to cover it. This is not a natural fit now with Marsh's absence. And it's going to be very interesting to see how they navigate this.
Yeah, I have a feeling that, Rob was asked after the game last night, well, is Cody Clemens a guy who can get that time out there? And he said, yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's a possibility. I know for a fact that they don't like Cody Clemens defensively in the outfield. And so that's why I don't think that they're as gung-ho to give that a run as, well, we'll just plug in Clemens as the left-handed outfield bat, because he might be okay at the plate, but he's not good in the outfield. He's an infielder. He could go out there in an emergency, but he's an infielder first and foremost. So I don't think that they look at a long run and say, well, Cody Clemens can get the bulk of the at-bats as a lefty in the outfield. And you're talking about Merrifield, and you're right. I mean, Merrifield's going to probably get some of the action out there now. But between Merrifield and Pache and Rojas, the guys who kind of rotate around. I mean, Castellanos is in the lineup every game, but the guys who come in and out of the lineup, they're all weak hitting right-handed batters.
Right-handed, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you need a left-handed bat to be out there somewhere.
I mean, that combination of Merrifield, Pache, Rojas, Castellanos, like all three of them in any given game, it's like, oof, that's not ideal. I mean, look at last night. We were both there. We both covered it. And I said to you, you look up at the board and you looked at the bottom half of that lineup. And I know that there was some production down there last night. Like Stubbs had a decent game, and, Rojas made some things happen. Castellanos hit the ball hard a couple times, but you just look at the names stacked up on the card and you go, oof, that lineup's like a little short all of a sudden. And certainly JT wasn't in there, and that changes things to a degree, but this could be a little bit of a problem now.
Yeah, the one thing that I think, and we briefly talked about it last night as well, that the Phillies have an option here to do is to call up David Dahl, who's got major league experience and had a really nice spring training, was one of the last cuts for them. It was always expected, I guess, that he would go down, although I did think that there was a chance that he would win a job because of how good his spring training was. So far this year, AAA, he's hitting 340 with a 416 on base, 660 OPS, 1076 OPS. I mean, 660 slugging, 1076 OPS, 12 homers, 26 RBI in 43 games. I think that makes the most sense, right?
And he's not on the 40-man, but we did it. We did this last night. We spent 5 hours together. Go look at the 40-man. I don't know that it's the crunch that some people might think it is. There are a few names on that 40-man that I think you could I don't want to say comfortably remove, but I think that there's some wiggle room on that 40-man.
Yeah, I think so too. There might even be a pitcher that you can get rid of. There might be, an infield. You pointed out Rodolfo Castro.
Do we have to protect Rodolfo Castro?
Right. And the other thing is there are pitchers. So they might not even need to get rid of somebody off the 40-man. Depends on how you look at it. Like guys like Luis Ortiz and Michael Rucker, who have really struggled, to kind of get back from their injuries in spring training. Neither one of them are on the 60-day IL. You could transfer one of them to the 60 and not have to give up the 40-man spot. So, I mean, that's an option too, without even getting rid of anybody. So, I think when you really look at it, David Dahl makes the most sense to me right now to get the call up and to replace Brandon Marsh.
Yeah, so I mean, certainly that's going to bear watching. We'll see. I guess in terms of the more, I don't want to say the more pressing issues. I think the Marsh injury is probably the most pressing issue at the moment. Just let's take in a little bit of what we saw this weekend. I guess a few things jump out at me, and we'll just start with Taijuan Walker this time rather than kick it down the road 45 minutes.
You have to after last night, right?
By the time Alec Burleson homers in the third inning, it's a 105-mile-an-hour rocket.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals had put 5 balls in play with an exit velocity of over 100 miles an hour. And you say, okay, that's not good, but things happen. The problem is that this is a continuation of what has been a season-long trend for Taijuan Walker. I mean, I'll just give you this real quick. He's allowed an average 91.9 mile per hour exit velocity this season. That's bottom 4% of all Major League Baseball pitchers. 6.11 expected ERA, bottom 4%. He's allowed a 546 expected slugging percentage. That's the bottom 2% of all pitchers. We can look at his ERA, we can look at his whip. None of it's good. But then when you dive in deeper, you're like, man, the contact that he's allowing has just been It's been so loud and so consistently loud. That's 7 starts now. And I know they're 4-3 into 7 starts. Okay. I just don't know, man. Like, we heard the chants last night. Not the whole stadium, wasn't 40,000 people, but there was an audible, "We want Turnbull." I don't know. I mean, walk me through this.
I think that they have enough run, and it's funny because we talked about this when he first was coming back, and I thought that they were going to look at maybe the first 5 starts and then assess and then say he might need another, he might get another 3 or 4 beyond that, but that they would probably have a better idea of where they want to go after those first 5. Here he is 7 starts in, and we obviously know he's not giving them the production that they need. But I'm wondering now if having the start that they've had, that they feel that they can kind of get away with starting him every 5th day, at least up until the trade deadline. Usually that's around the time when teams make a determination. Like, they split up the season into thirds, right? The first third is see what we have. And the second third is, okay, see where our guys are. Can they get out of, like, if are the guys that got off to a great start, can they maintain it? The guys that are behind, can they get caught up? Can they turn their seasons around? And then the final third is, all right, it's go time. And so, we're more than a third of the way through the season. So I think they're past that initial evaluation point. But now I think it's, here's the runway for guys. There's a few guys on this team. You mentioned Merrifield. He's one. Taijuan Walker certainly one. Castellanos is certainly one at this point. You got to just see, can they get their seasons turned around in this next third of the season? And then you make a call at the trade deadline. And I think that maybe, even though Turnbull was really good coming in for Ranger Suarez the other night, I think that they're going to give Taijuan Walker several more starts before they make a call here.
Yeah, and that's a little bit different than what we said last week, right? Because, I mean, if you go back to what we said last week, it was, if he struggles on Sunday night, is he really going to get the ball in London next weekend against the Mets? And you just get the sense that
I thought that there was a thought of that, Bob. I think the Ranger Suarez injury scared them.
Interesting.
Yes, I do. I think that now they're going to get away with it, right? He's probably, well, I shouldn't say he's probably going to start. They didn't say with 100% certainty that he's going to start, but they have spoke very optimistically about where Ranger is. We saw him in the clubhouse yesterday. He had nothing on his hand. His hand didn't look swollen. The swelling was down. I'm sure it's sore. I'm sure it's bothering him a little bit. But right now, there's a belief that he can make his next start. It's not 100% yet, but they believe that. And so we'll see what happens there. But I do think that kind of thing says we're better off not losing this guy completely. And now I say losing him, I mean like losing it, like having him check out, right? If by taking him out of the rotation, let's just keep him in, see if he can work his way through it, and then make a call in about 6 weeks. And I think that's probably where they're at.
It feels like that. It kind of feels like, what are you waiting to see to make a move? And I have to tell you, admittedly, I'm so tired of talking about this. But you can't get away from this storyline. Like, if you consume this team on a daily basis, this is a talking point. It just is. And it's unique in so many different ways, because it's not just you're barking about a guy who's kind of been underwhelming as your 5th starter effectively. But it's that there's a guy waiting in the wings who has been so good. And that is what's really made this such a hot button issue. This is why we keep talking about it, because every time you watch this guy pitch, you're like, my God, this is not going well. And then that there's Spencer Turnbull sitting there who was phenomenal for you and then looked great the other night in long relief. And it's just kind of like everyone's saying, what are you waiting for? What are we doing here? And that's why we kind of keep defaulting back to this conversation. But I agree with you. I think that they're looking at it from a perspective of, we are 41-19. This is not hurting our ability to win a World Series this season. Let's just wait and see and gather more information. And I think that they feel they will eventually go back to Spencer Turnbull. I do think privately, if you went to Caleb, if you went to Rob, if you went to Dave, and you said, who do you think is going to be your fifth starter come August? I bet you they think it's Spencer Turnbull. But right now, I think that there's enough of a measured approach. Like, whereas we tend to live in the moment, fans certainly live in the moment. I think that the Phillies are able to go, all right, this is not great, but let's understand all of the factors before we start yanking these guys back and forth.
Yeah, I think you're right, Bob. And when you think about, say, well, if you push it to August 1st before Turnbull gets back into your rotation, he probably gets you, 10, 12 starts over the final rest of the season. And he gave you 6 already.
So if you look at 32 starts from that spot, which is about what you get.
Yeah, he'll still get the bulk of them.
Yeah, he'll still get the bulk of them. 17-15 split.
Yeah, and so therefore it's not a bad approach.
We'll see. I mean, it's tough to watch. And I will say, to Taijuan Walker's credit, like last night, he stands up in front of reporters and he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
He knows that he hasn't been good. It's not like he's delusional. It's not like he's saying, oh, well, I'm right there. I'm pitching well. I mean, he knows. He said it. He said, these guys have played, and I'll paraphrase, but these guys have played so well this season and we're having so much success. I really want to be a part of it. And so it's disappointing that I'm pitching this way. So, the accountability is there. I know everyone was kind of sort of chirping about how he felt burned by what happened last year with the playoffs, and certainly his social media after the season ended, it felt a little chippy. But I mean, I think that he knows what the deal is here, and he knows why people are booing him in the first inning in a nationally televised game, because he just he's not answered the bell. And though it probably shouldn't be the biggest consideration, the money does factor into the way that people think about this. We're like $18 million for this. Could you imagine what $18 million right now freed up could do for you here?
Yeah.
So it's not a great situation, and hopefully for his sake, he just starts pitching better. I mean, that would alleviate a lot of this if he could go out and just be better.
And he doesn't have to be he doesn't even have to be a lot better, Bob. Just has to be a little bit better. Like, give up a one less run a game. You have one less run a game and you're fine in a number 5 role. I mean, because if you compare him to the number 5 pitchers on every team in baseball right now, he's probably about what most teams have. I know his numbers are not the greatest, but I mean, it's not. And we talk about track records and things like that. Like, he's probably better than what most teams have. That said, you can't go into a stretch drive with this guy is pitching this way in your rotation. You need something better than that. And that's all there is to it. But I agree. I mean, I think that there's going to be a little bit of room for him to try, but not a lot. I think at some point the leash gets shortened even further.
So last night, Phillies don't hit with runners in scoring position. I'm like, okay, is there something to talk about there? And I was like, maybe are we starting to see a trend where that this speaks volumes, or this speaks to a larger issue with their performance situationally? Because I see this after every time they lose a game. It's like, see, they can't hit situationally. They can't bear down when it matters. And I'm like, okay, let me at least just dive into this and see if there's any validity to people freaking out over one bad game. No. Phillies this year with runners in scoring position, top 5 in batting average, top 5 in on-base percentage, top 5 in slugging. And then obviously that translates to top 5 OPS as well. They've been very good this season with runners in scoring position, which is different than what we've seen in recent years.
Correct.
At the beginning of last year, especially, they were dismal with runners in scoring position. So this team has actually performed fairly well in that spot. So I don't have anything for you on that front. We get on here and we start talking after a loss, all right, let's dive into maybe some things that we can kind of harp on that are negative. I don't have anything for you there. I really don't. I mean, I think that the injury situation of Marsh is certainly problematic. The outfield, I think in general, is problematic, but I don't have these takeaways. I'm telling you, man, we've said it before. Everyone is so revved up over this team, though, that when they lose a game, it's just like I don't know if it's because people's same game parlays are getting busted. I don't know if it's because they expect the Phillies to win 122 games. I actually think that's exactly what it is, by the way. I really do. They're on Sunday Night Baseball. I'll put my money on it, and then they get blown up. And so every loss is like, an NFL loss. But I don't see it, man.
I'll give you some things that were more. I know people are annoyed with the extra innings last night, right? They're not able to get the run home, and this is the third time it's happened in the last.
I find it annoying.
Where it's annoying, but I mean, last night's a tough situation because you go 3 right-handers against Helsley, who's got 9. I couldn't believe it. Was surprised, and I said it to you. It's like 19 saves already. I mean, they've won 28 games.
Mid-90s throwback stuff there.
19 saves already. Like, it's unbelievable.
Arthur Smith.
And he's a tough pitcher, right? So I mean, that's a tough thing to do to try and scratch that run across. And you can argue all you want about that particular thing, but I look at situations earlier in the game that bothered me. And I'll start. The first one was Schwarber's at bat in the second inning when Stubbs is on third base. They had just tied the game 2-2. He got blown away.
Yeah, that's when he walked to the plate. What did I tell you when he was walking to the plate?
Yeah, you thought he was going to hit a home run.
I said he's going to hit a home run right here, and then he had his worst at bat of the season.
So that one was bad. In the fifth inning, right, and the Phillies tie the game a second time with the 2 bunt errors, right? So Stubbs bunts, Lynn misses, goes right between his legs. Rojas tries to sacrifice him to throw his high at first base. Now you got 2 guys on. Schwarber gets a hit. Stott gets a hit that drives in the 2 runs. Now you tied the game. There's a lot of momentum. Runners at first and second. Bryce Harper's at bat was an awful at bat, right? He strikes out, doesn't even get the runner to the third. Bohm flies out. If you can put contact on the ball, Schwarber gets to third base. Bohm's fly out then brings in another run, which would have been the game-winning run, okay, in the fifth inning. And then Marsh ends up striking out looking on a really good pitch, by the way, that we talked about. So, like, that inning bothered me. And the ninth inning bothered me when you're at the top of the order, Schwarber, Stott, Harper, and they come up and make 3 outs in 5 pitches. Like, there was...
Yeah, that ninth inning was quite feeble.
They completely changed what they do.
Yeah.
They're all about working a pitcher and making long at-bats and grinding them out. And they just went up there, hack, hack, hack. And it was like... So there were moments in that game, and it was from the top of your order. It was from the guys who you're expecting to be the people that, driving your runs that had feeble at-bats in that game. So to me, those are more important things that cost you the game than the 10th inning not being able to score.
You know what it is? Like, you can talk about that, and I agree with you. Everything you said is absolutely 100% right. The thing that I'm coming back to this year, though, like, I look at the standings and I see a 6.5 game lead in the NL East, a situation that none of us could have ever expected. And certainly Atlanta's injury situation plays a part in that. But I'm having a hard time. Like, we've done this show for years, and we react to what we saw over the past week or weekend or whatever it is. And we get in the weeds and we talk about all of these things. But this year, right now, given their overall success, I'm having a harder time saying, like, okay, that's all true. But then what's the next part of that? Is that unacceptable? Does it say anything about the Phillies' DNA? Is that something that we need to worry about come October? Like, that's where I'm kind of different this year, because in the past, I'm like, prove it to me, guys, because you haven't done it, and you can't say, well, you should trust us. There was no foundation to put any trust in place. But now there has been a track record of success, and I know last year was a disaster. I know people are all hyped up about that. Like, that's what we have to worry about again. Like, it's going to go down like it did last year. They're going to get cold. They won't be able to push runs across when it matters. When you get to that, like, that nitty gritty part of the game, when you really got to push one across, they can't do it. Okay. But, like, I don't know that definitively. So I'm having a hard time, like, making a greater point. Like, I can't develop a thesis off of this.
No, and you're right. I mean, so the thing of it is that if this team at right now, instead of being 41-19, was, let's say, 33-27.
Yeah, you guys are blowing it. You have a chance to run by Atlanta. What are you doing? Jesus Christ.
Right.
But instead you're like, oh, you could have maintained your 7.5 game lead and swept your 8th series out of the last 20.
Right. That's the thing.
How dare you not?
Yeah,
That's tough, man.
And to sit there, look, even a team that wins 100 games is going to lose 62 times. So, there's going to be reasons that they lose those games. And this just happened to be the reason they lost this particular game. And so, yes, we go look at it in a vacuum and we can say this should have happened, this should have happened, this should have happened. But this is not some overarching problem that has developed so far this season with the Phillies. It's just not. And if you try to make it, and you try to say that it is, like you pointed out at the beginning of this segment, when you said, they're top 5 in the league and with runners in scoring position. Well, then guess what? Last night's game is an anomaly in that sense. Going 3 for 17 was not good, but it was not good in the sense of the one game, not in the sense of over the course of 60 games to start the season, because they have been very good at doing just that over the course of 60 games.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you who else had a good weekend, the Phillies bullpen. And I know it didn't end well last night with Gregory Soto, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about him today.
Yeah.
And that'll be the negative twist we can put on this. But over the weekend, the Phillies in those 3 games, the bullpen took down 14 2/3 innings. They did not walk a batter.
Yeah.
They allowed 9 hits, man. 9 with no walks, and they struck out 17. That is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. And it's continuing a larger trend. Like, remember when we went back and we were like, look, this bullpen's really good. Everyone just needs to relax here.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, yeah, top bullpen in baseball, top 5 bullpen in baseball. Get the fuck out of here. Okay.
Well, it is.
Well, guess what?
It is.
Since May 1st, Phillies relievers have posted a combined 1.96 ERA. Do you care to guess where that ranks among all Major League Baseball teams?
Is it number 1?
It is.
Oh.
They also have a 19.3% strikeout to walk percentage, which is number 1. Their 1.07 WHIP ranks 3rd. And according to Fangraphs, the bullpen has accumulated the most WAR since May 1st. They have been awesome. And look, there are moments, they have them. Jeff Hoffman had a couple hiccups right around when we spoke to him. That's going to happen. His ERA is basically sitting at 1. He's been one of the National League's best relievers this year. Sir Anthony Dominguez got off to a terrible start. Go back to what he's done since the beginning of May. I don't know that we're in full confidence mode with him yet, but the numbers are pretty good. He's been effective in preventing runs. You look at what Matt Strahm's doing, who I want to talk about in depth here in a moment. Just arguably the best reliever in the National League right now. Jose Alvarado, I still have a lot of trust in him.
Boy, was he fun last night?
Yeah. It was awesome. That was a show.
It was a show.
Gold Glover, he said to him on the way out.
I did. He looked at, he just laughed. He said, I said, if you try to win a Gold Glove, he just looked at me, he laughed, he said, no.
And again, when you watch one team, I like baseball, we know it. Like, I know obviously some people are listening to this and they watch other games, they watch other teams. But what you do is you watch your team, and you watch your team every night. You see the bullpen blow games, or you see the bullpen give up runs in a tough spot. And you're like, well, they're not great, they're not perfect. Watch the game, watch the sport. It happens. It's the sport.
Yeah.
So, but when you stack the numbers up, there are a lot of teams that would love to run 4 or 5 deep out the way that the Phillies do.
Yeah.
And they're going to have their moments. It's not all going to be good, but man, like, it's there. It really is there. And I guess we'll start with the downside of things. You look at Gregory Soto, who last year, actually, I thought pitched better than his numbers indicated.
Yes.
And if you dive in to the StatCast numbers, like, you see expected outcome versus what actually happened. And like, it screams, hey, this guy performed at a much higher level than his baseline numbers. And he was a victim of some blow up appearances, which also pumped things up. But overall, pretty good. This year, it's sort of the opposite. He struggled, and it's just so strange because there's a little bit of a pedigree with him. He comes from Detroit where, he's had success, an all-star level reliever. And you see him throwing 97, 98, 99 from the left side with like a little bit of a funky delivery too. And you just think to yourself, like, this guy should be wipeout. And he's been extraordinarily hittable. So, and I'll get the numbers here as we talk. I'll bring up some interesting points, but maybe just kind of set the stage here. Like, what is your overall impression of Gregory Soto been?
I think it's been a location issue with him. I think that he's not hitting his spots. I think he's too much in the middle of the plate. He does have that, that wipeout fastball that night. I mean, he was throwing 99 last night. We were watching it and we're sitting there talking about him a little bit. And he's got it. So it's the same kind of thing that we talked about with Dominguez, that the stuff is there. It's just not consistent, and it's actually less consistent than Dominguez in my mind. And it's just too much of the plate. He's got to get more onto the corners a little bit. And the problem with him in the past has been when he got to that, when we asked for the complete opposite in the past. He was being too fine. It's just like, dude, you got 99. Like, just go out there and let it go and let somebody kind of catch up to it. Well, he's taking that too far to the other extreme in my mind, right? And so I think it's a situation where he just needs to get into better parts of the strike zone with his stuff, and he would be better. But he's not being put into any real high leverage spots. I know he comes in the 10th inning last night, but he only did because they had used everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, all their guys went 6, 7, 8, 9. So he had to pitch the 10th inning because there are two lefties up in that inning.
They had the two lefties, right?
Yeah. So it had to be Soto. But really, he does not get a lot of high leverage situations anymore because he's not as reliable as maybe he once was.
Well, here you go. He's allowed a 92.6 miles per hour exit velocity this season on average. It's bottom 1% of Major League Baseball. Hard hit percentage, 52.7%, bottom 1% of Major League Baseball, bottom 8% in walk rate, expected ERA 5.70, bottom 6. I mean, it's bad. Like, his expected ERA last year was 2.79. He pitched to a 4.62, but it was expected at 2.79. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's almost a full 2-run disparity there. This year he's at 4.91, but he's at 5.70 expected. So he's actually been the benefit of some luck.
Right.
What's really weird? Like, you look at the velocity, he's averaging 97.5 with this fastball velocity. That's in the 95th percentile. So he's still throwing hard as hell. He's still getting some chase, 68 percentile chase rate, 76 percentile whiff rate. Like, he's still getting some swing and miss, but it's like he's not finishing at bats. Like you said, like, locationally, pitch to pitch, he shows it, but he can't string it together consistently enough to finish guys. And, like, that's last night in a nutshell, right? Like,
yeah,
he gets the runner to third, 2 outs. It looks like they might get out of it. And then that would set up in the bottom of the 10th a situation where I don't know that Alec Boehm's going to bunt. But, like, you feel pretty good, like, at that point. Like, the momentum turns, you hold them off, go win a ball game at home, get the sweep. You can almost feel it.
But even if you don't, Bob, and here's the thing, here's why it bothered me a little bit with Soto. Because even if you don't have, even if the bottom of the 10th goes exactly as it went, right? You're facing Helsley, and that's a tough matchup. Right. But the Cardinals used up almost their entire bullpen.
Relievers, yeah.
Right?
And then you're gonna pass the heart of the Cardinals order.
You're gonna be in the bottom of the Cardinals order and the top of the 11th.
Top of the Phillies, yeah.
And then the Phillies get a chance in the bottom of the 11th against whatever's left, whatever direct they have left out there.
Well, so I guess at this point the Phillies would have still had the bottom of the order coming up, but
the bottom of the order was decent.
Well, they were productive last night. They probably had better at bats than the guys at the top. So
right.
It's sort of frustrating, and that's where I'm kind of getting to. Then you get Gorman at the plate, and he tries to run a ball in, he throws a sinker in. Wasn't a terrible pitch, it wasn't totally fat, but it got a little bit too much of the plate, and he ropes it into right 99.3 mile per hour scorcher.
Yeah,
and ball game. It's just like he's the one guy. If you're going to pick something apart right now, where you're like, damn, like they do need a little bit more out of him. Especially if Dominguez, and I mean, now Dominguez has been better, but if you don't have full confidence in him, that's where you go, like, do you need another piece at the deadline? And I would say you don't have to. Like, I think the bullpen, as I said previously, is good enough to win in the postseason, but that's where you feel like maybe they're one guy short. If you don't have full confidence in Dominguez, and if Soto's going to be this guy where, like, sometimes he's okay, but you don't trust him really, then you might just be like one piece short or a half a piece short.
Yeah. And the other interesting name that, no one's really talked about, and I know that they're keeping him stretched out for now as a starter in the minors, is the kid Michael Mercado, who, when I was down in spring training, Bob, was really impressive.
Yeah, I remember you sent me a text message like, you should see this kid.
Wow. I mean, like a really, really impressive. And I was kind of surprised, in all honesty, that they were stretching him out as a starter, because I looked at it and said, with this stuff could be back of the bullpen stuff. Yeah. Like he throws 99. He's big, right? And it just looks like he's just nasty coming at you. To me, even though he's stretched out right now, like I think if you look at a play where you say, okay, maybe we'd switch to Turnbull to take that Walker spot in August. Does Mercado come in to be that multi-inning guy because he's stretched out enough in your bullpen, and then come playoff time, he doesn't even have to be a multi-inning guy. I mean, if he's successful at the major league level for 2 months, does he even have to be that? Maybe he could be that other arm in the bullpen. So I think that's another option that they have. Nobody really talks about. I think he's going to be here at some point this season. I'm just not sure when and in what role, but they do have, you're right. They maybe don't need that guy, but maybe they do. It's just one of those, it's a luxury conversation that we're having, I think, at this point for the Phillies.
Okay, ready? Phillies All-Stars right now.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Who are they?
I have 5.
Okay.
Definites. I have 5 definites, and I have 3 guys who I could argue are deserving, but probably don't make it just because you're not going to bring 8 guys from the same team.
Yeah.
But the 5 guys I think are definites are Bryce Harper, because he leads all first basemen in every category. Alec Boehm, even though he's cooled off a little bit, he's also the best third baseman in the National League statistically. So those 2 are definite. Ranger Suarez, who is, the front runner right now for the National League Cy Young. Zach Wheeler, who's right behind him, and Matt Strahm, who is, like you mentioned 15 minutes ago, probably the best reliever in the National League. The 3 guys who I think are close and have a shot, JT Realmuto, because there's not a lot of great catchers in the National League. I mean, William Contreras is probably going to get the start, but Realmuto could well be the backup because there's not a lot of options there. Aaron Nola, who I think has kind of been a little underrated so far, the way he's pitched this year. And Jeff Hoffman, who I think, they're not going to bring 2 middle relievers, or, well, he's not really a middle guy, but I think those 3 guys have a shot as well.
Agreed. Matt Strahm is not allowed an earned run since opening day. 24 consecutive appearances, 23 and 2/3 innings pitched. In those 24 games, opponents are hitting 139 against him with a 371 OPS. Strahm struck out 33. He's walked 3. I mean, this is like, not only is this an all-time run, but I think it's just amazing when you think about who's doing it.
Yeah.
No offense to Matt Strahm. He was really good for them last year, and better, I think, than anybody could have expected. I mean, maybe the Phillies would tell you that was exactly what they were expecting, but he certainly exceeded my expectations.
Yep.
And you wondered, like, could he do that again? Would he be as effective? And they went out and they signed him to the extension this offseason. You thought to yourself, okay, like, solid little piece. Like, I like Matt Strahm. And now he's like prime Eckersley. Like, what the hell has happened here?
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
He's just been, his fastball location has been amazing, and that's what it really is. It's about the fastball, and it's a combination of his. He's always had that kind of slightly deceptive delivery because he's kind of big and all over the place with his his arms and his legs. It's a lot of movement, right? So he hides the ball well, but it's really now just getting to pinpoint locations in the strike zone. And he's just so good and so effective with it. And everybody you talk to says the same thing. You talk to both the catchers. I asked Realmuto a week and a half ago about it, and he talked about the fastball command. I've asked Stubbs about it. He talked about his fastball command. Rob Thompson talks about his fastball command. It's everybody's talking about the same thing, and so therefore that's what it is. But yeah, this is a pretty good run. So it's interesting that there was a note that came out last night. The Phillies actually provided it, and I maybe remembered one of these. Bob, tell me what you think, because these are all recent. Since the earned runs have been tracked, so since 1912, Matt Strahm is only the 5th Phillies pitcher to allow 2 or fewer earned runs in his first 25 appearances. The other 4 have all occurred in the last 18 years, which is wild, right? So it never happened until 2006, and then it's now happened 5 times since 2006. Here are the other guys, okay?
I'm trying to think of them before you tell me. And
okay, you want to take one of them should be easy. The other 3 you'll be like, oh, really? 2 of them you'll be really, and one you'll be like, oh yeah, I kind of sort of remember that one.
Yeah, now go ahead.
All right. The first one was Real Cormier in 2006.
Oh yeah, I remember. I do remember that he had an insane run with them.
Yeah,
he was awesome.
That was so sick. The second one was Brad Lidge, 2008. Okay. So that's the one I kind of thought was the easy one, right?
Makes sense.
2017 All-Star Pat Neshek.
That's so depressing, dude. That was the year they sent him and he was fine, but God, this is the guy we're sending to the All-Star game. Yes. This is our best shot. Where you just mentioned, hey, there's 8 guys. There's 8 guys that have a legit case.
And Pat Neshek, if you remember, didn't want to pitch 2 days in a row.
Yeah.
I pitched my 1 inning and see you in a few days.
He was a big autographs guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Wasn't that his whole thing?
Yeah, it was his thing. And the most recent one, and I don't remember this one, and it was a year we started our podcast. So 2018. Edubray Ramos.
I would never have guessed that.
I don't remember it at all. Yeah. I couldn't believe it. So he had some great start that year as well. So
what happened? I guess that's my response there.
Not only did what happened, he was out of baseball pretty quick. It wasn't even I think he came back the next year and then he went somewhere else for a season, and then COVID happened and he was gone, and that was it. But anyway, Matt Strahm has better numbers than all of them. Most strikeouts, fewest walks. So overall, what Strahm's doing now is the most impressive start to a season of any Phillies reliever ever.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. It's just been amazing to watch. I want to touch on one other thing before we get to one last thing.
Yeah.
This is your deal, your research, or your find anyway, but then I sort of hijacked it.
That's fine.
ESPN.com has something that they call the Cy Young predictor, and it's Bill James, statistical guru Bill James, and Rob Nyer, ESPN.com baseball writer. They came up with this together, and they assign Cy Young points based on this formula. Takes into things like earned runs, innings pitched, saves, wins, losses, strikeouts. And they put this formula together to come up with this predictive model. And right now there is a heck of a situation here where the Phillies have the top 3 guys in this model in terms of who's going to win the NL Cy Young Award. And right now it predicts Ranger Suarez to win it, 98.7 points. Number 2 is Aaron Nola. At 73.9 points, and Zach Wheeler's third at 71 points. I guess my biggest takeaway, it's we already know the numbers. We talk about how good the starting staff is, best ERA in baseball, look at all the different categories. This is a totally different way to contextualize the same point, which is damn, these guys have been remarkably good. It also sort of shines light on something that you wrote about over the weekend, which is that Aaron Nola is sort of been underrated, which is amazing because I feel like if you go back over the last number of years, Aaron Nola is one of the guys that we always put the spotlight on. We break down every single start. He has a good start. It's wow, is he becoming that guy, or is he that guy? Is he an ace, right? Or if he doesn't have a good start, it's what's wrong with this guy? Why can't he put it together?
Right.
We've been doing this for years. And this year, we're not even talking about the guy.
Yeah.
We're not talking about him. And I think that, at large, nobody's really talking about him. He's just quietly been very good. He hasn't been Suarez Wheeler good, but he's been damn good. And so much so that when you put this formula in play, he's been better than, well, I don't want to say he's been better than, and I don't know that that's necessarily even what they're really doing here, but they're saying, play this out. And he's got a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were talking about this last night and I don't think Aaron Nola is going to win the Cy Young, but if you looked at we looked at the betting odds, and he's the 11th best betting odds right now. Like I said, it's a good bet, right? That's
Wheeler 1, Suarez 3. So that all meshes with what ESPN has here, but then Nola 11th.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a value bet, take a shot on Aaron Nola to win the Cy Young. And the reason I think that he's kind of been under the radar a little bit, Bob, is because of Suarez and Sanchez more than anything else. I think that Suarez's start has been so unbelievable that everybody has gotten so hyped up over him. And then Christopher Sanchez has taken, as we talked about on the last episode, taken that next step and really become, better than anybody ever thought he would be. And, Wheeler's been Wheeler. So Nola has just kind of been like the fourth story in the rotation. And yet he's been really consistent and really good. I pointed out, in a tweet, I'm not a big fan of the quality start stat, and most people aren't who really follow the game because it really is. It says, oh, you have a 4.50 ERA. But the reality of it is that you can have a quality start that's better than 4.50. And that Nola's numbers since he's had 9 quality starts in his 12 starts. And in those 9 starts, his numbers are like I forget what I put out. It was 2.08, I think was it, or 2.18 was his ERA. And he's just really, really shut down. I mean, he still gives up the odd solo homer, probably one more than you like per game kind of thing, right? But he doesn't give up hits. He just doesn't give up hits. Like the game's Friday night, he gave up 2 home runs. They're both solos. He gave 3 hits. There's only 1 other hit the entire game. He's putting teams away. And it's every game. It's like he had a 2-hitter the game before when he gave up the 2 home runs. The only 2 hits he gave up. Then he had a complete game shutout. Like he's been really, really good, and yet not drawing any attention, which is wild because, like you said, he's been a talking point for 5 years, 6 years prior to this, and all of a sudden it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's just the Nola start. And it's fine, and because he's doing a good job.
Yep. We'll see how it goes here. I mean, like I would love to see that, and it's really nice to see them sign the deal. They bring him back, and it's paying off right now. Yeah. And I'm not saying that you can validate the entirety of the contract because he's made 10 good starts,
12 starts total.
Starts.
Well, it's 12 starts total. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, I mean, it's gotten off to a good start here for sure. And you take out that first game against the Braves, and it looks a heck of a lot better. All right, let's get to one last thing.
Well, before I get to one last thing, I just wanted to throw this out there. Not that this is a conversation piece, but since it's related to the Phillies, I just wanted to point out that Sixto Sanchez for the Marlins went back on the IL with a shoulder injury again. So for all the people, just for all of those Phillies fans who were upset about trading him away 5 years ago to get JT Realmuto, how's that worked out?
Yeah. I mean, it's been a franchise-altering trade in some ways for the Phillies. I mean, just to have that guy be able to play at that level for this amount of time. I mean, you've gotten an all-time catcher here, in terms of this organization's history for that.
And it's a perfect example of why prospects are just that.
Yeah.
They're just prospects, right? You never know. And he was supposed to be major league level, legit top rotation starter, and has never panned out. But here was my one
idea who the Brewers are pitching tonight. Like I'm on all the betting apps. There's nobody listed. Their site where they do the official listing isn't listing anyone. Like what are we doing here?
Yeah, I haven't seen.
Are they like? Do they have a guy and we don't know who it is? Like, I mean, is there a guy in turn and they just haven't committed to it, or are they coming in tonight with just nobody? Like
it says TBD.
I mean, the Phillies are.
Their entire series is listed as TBD right now.
I know Phillies have been like lights out at home, and I know Wheeler's going and all that, but the Brewers have been really good. The Phillies are minus 220 tonight at home. So like I don't know if we're getting a bull. I guess it's our job to know this, but I don't. I'm looking at this like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I don't know why that's the case. I'm trying to go to the Brewers site to see if there's anything that was even suggested. So, but there's nothing. They don't even have anything on their.
Sorry, I'm not up to date on my Brewers starting rotation.
They don't even have anything on their site to say that they're, who's gonna throw. So anyway,
all right. Well,
here's my one last thing that I figured we had to talk about this just because it was funny, and it's also a name that has come up in the past for the Phillies. Oh, they should go get this guy. And here's probably a reason why you don't want to go get this guy. Did you see the Tommy Pham thing?
I did.
So there's a play at the plate, right? Tommy Pham gets thrown out at the plate. And I guess, William Contreras is the catcher for the Brewers. Tommy Pham's on the White Sox. And William Contreras, I don't know, after the tag kind of gets up quick and maybe says something to him. And
the pitcher was pumped up. That's what got Pham all fired up. The pitcher was really, really animated.
Yeah, so Pham gets all fired up and it starts to be a little bit of a, a little bit of a shoving match, kind of shouting match going at each other. He has to be grabbed, this and that. And so then after the game, he's asked about the play. And so in the same breath, this guy throws his third base coach under the bus and then has a comment about wanting to fight William Contreras. It's one of the funnier comments. He goes, "It was a shallow fly ball to left field. You would expect the left fielder to throw the base runner out on that play," he said. "The third base coach sends you got to go. I'm nailed at home by a mile. I'm going to the dugout. I hear tough guy Contreras with all the hoorah shit. I never start anything, but I'll be prepared to finish it. There's a reason why I do all kinds of fighting in the offseason, because I'm prepared to fuck somebody up. So take it for what it is."
There's my initial reaction is that's hilarious and kind of funny and cool, I guess. But then I just knowing what I've know from talking to other people, they're like, this guy's an idiot. And so I can't I don't know. I mean, imagine if he was on the Phillies though, right? And he did that, you'd almost be like, what's wrong with this guy? In the moment, his reaction, you'd be like, what's wrong with this guy? But then if he gave that press conference, you'd be like, well, that was awesome. So I don't know how I'm digesting this particular whatever you want to call this.
I'm digesting it because it's this classic thing that happens with teams that are a shit show, right? This guy played for the Mets too. We made fun of the Mets on the last episode. He once played for the Mets. Same thing, right? He is on a bad team. And bad teams allow this kind of outburst, right? Bad teams allow Jorge Lopez to throw his glove into the crowd and say he's plays for the worst team in baseball. Bad teams allow for Tommy Pham to say he wants to fuck people up, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that should never happen. We're entertained by it, right? I mean, there's nothing wrong with us being entertained by it, but in the sport of baseball, if you're the White Sox today, you're embarrassed as hell that this happened. You're embarrassed as hell that your player said what he said. That's not good. That's not good for the White Sox. And so that's why, that would never fly here. And I'm sure the Phillies are readily aware what this guy is like and what he's about and why he would never be on their radar to be added to a team that's a playoff or championship contender. So no.
It's interesting. Obviously, when the White Sox were here, they were so bad. I think they were 3-20 at one point, and then they played 500 ball for a couple of weeks, where they were a little spunk, and now it's just going off the deep end again. I think 10 in a row? They've
11.
lost? 11 now. Okay. I mean, it's just what a mess. Yeah. So we've kind of been having these conversations periodically about which is the worst team in all of the game, and for the minute, it looked like it might be the Rockies. It could have been the Marlins. I think the White Sox are taking control again.
They have, yes.
Yeah, for sure. All right, look, that'll wrap it up for today. We'll be back later this week. Make sure that you're listening to us. The show is growing. We're really excited about it. I feel like a lot of it might even be word of mouth type stuff. Look, we love doing it. It's fun for us to see the numbers grow. We're going to continue to put this content out here. We really do think there are some good shows out there, some good Phillies podcasts. We're really proud of what we're doing. And so anything that you guys can do out there to share, get the word out, retweets, interact with us on Twitter. We love all that stuff. So make sure that you're following Anthony at AnSamPhilly. Follow me at Bob_Wankel. Subscribe to the show on YouTube, Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon, anywhere that you get your shows. And we'll talk to you later this week.